Welcome to AISA.
AISA!
Welcome everyone. Bo, there was something a bit special about that intro.
Yeah, so last week we were at the AISA conference in Melbourne. It's the first time that we've actually been able to catch up in person in over a year. So it was worth it. I had a lot of fun. It was a really good conference, to be honest.
And you're still feeling a bit poorly after the week, though, I've got to say. Just most of you, you're not your usual bubbly self.
It was a long week.
Shirt as well. What the hell?
I'm officially a businessman, so I have to wear collared shirts at all times. So actually, I didn't at AISA, so you'll see that in the video. Now I think about it.
No, it was a great week. There were a lot of really, really, really interesting sessions, keynotes. Chris Hadfield and what's the star man's name? Brian Cox. Yeah, he was pretty awesome as well. Yeah, so lots of good stuff. But the other really interesting thing and the really rewarding thing for us at Microsoft was that we came together nationally. I mean, as you saw in the intro montage, Bo and I actually physically got to hang out with each other and have a couple of nice social events during the week, which was as well, but also the broader team across the rest of Australia, the rest of the Microsoft organization, and New Zealand were in town for the event. My hometown, Melbourne, of course. So, and we turned it on for you too. Excellent weather, because it's always sunny in Melbourne.
It was good, and I was very surprised. I brought an umbrella. I only needed it once.
Yeah, well, excellent. But one of the things we did do and decided to do once we all came together is realize we've got these people in the one place at the same time. We literally grabbed a couple of our colleagues and ran them back to the Melbourne office, and we went upstairs. I found a conference room. We jumped in. We kicked off a recording. There's a couple of really, really interesting conversations that we managed to capture while everybody was in town. I'm going to apologize up front for the production quality, because this is literally jumping into a room and just kicking off a Teams meeting and hitting record. Hopefully it's not too bad. The sound quality is pretty good, but there's not much video pizzazz happening there. So it's more about the content than the showmanship in this case. But there's some interesting stuff. If you persevere and listen in, you're going to get some really interesting insights into some of our Purview solutions. We will get them back for a deeper conversation at a later stage, but I just want to do a quick little heads up that we are going to be resuming more of a regular cadence with Coast to Coast. We are going to kick off Demopalooza with a DLP special edition in a couple of weeks, as we've been promising forever, but we are going to kick that back off again. Bo, and we've got a reminder for something coming up as well, right?
Yeah. We've got Ignite coming up for us in Australia on the 15th of November. So make sure you tune into that. There's going to be a lot of stuff around Purview, but not just Purview, but everything else, the Copilot stuff, AI technologies, all of that sort of thing. There'll be a bunch of announcements and a bunch of things as we do every year at Ignite. So make sure you tune in for that as well.
Yeah, and then after Ignite, we'll obviously follow up with a little bit of local interpretation of those announcements. There are some amazing things coming. We're under embargo. We can't really talk about anything yet, but stay tuned. It's going to be awesome. So we will resume regular programming soon. In the meantime, enjoy this AISA edition. See you all soon. Bye.
See you in 2 weeks for DLP Demopalooza. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Coast to Coast. It has been a while. But it's worth the wait, because frankly, there's something very special about this episode. You can probably already tell. We're not remote. Bo's flown over to Melbourne to join me in person, which is great. We've been attending the AISA conference over at the convention centre down here in sunny Melbourne, and I've got myself some merch. If you're still here, well, actually you can't be here, because by the time you're watching this, it's all over.
If you've attended.
Yeah, you might already have some merch, but Bo's here in the flesh. We've got a couple of other guests as well, because one of the things we found is that with all of our colleagues congregating to the Microsoft booth down here in person, we've been exchanging stories and getting to know each other, but also getting a lot of really interesting notes from the field type of anecdotes, things that we've all experienced with customers, solutions we've come up with, problems that we've worked on together as well. So we've got a couple of fantastic guests who've sort of joined us as well. So we thought we'd give you a bit of an insight into the life of a Microsoft specialist and the kind of thing we do. And just tell us about yourselves and who you are, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm Sydney-based, technical specialist for security, and I specifically cover health and FSI in the corporate space.
Cool. Yeah. FSI being?
Financial services, yeah.
Financial services, cool.
Yes, across Australia and New Zealand. So pretty big customer base, but it's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, and we've kind of worked together remotely through emails and little bits and pieces. So for me, it's really special to actually spend some real time with you as well. So
yeah, I think an important fact to note is, what is your name?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Excellent point, Gary. Gary Boniface, technical specialist, Sydney-based.
Welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Dave Lambert, so I'm also a security compliance identity specialist at Microsoft, also Sydney-based in the same team as Gary.
Fantastic. That's actually a pretty big remit, actually. You've just reminded me, security, compliance, and identity. Bo and I were both the same for a while and kind of got split off in our part of the business. We're now more of a data security specialist, and the security specialist acquires. So these guys actually having to cover all that is awe-inspiring to me. So
there's a lot of technology to cover.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd start with some notes from the field, just an example of the sort of thing you've come across. And I think, Gary, you were going to go first and tell us a bit.
Yeah, that's fine. I can go first. Had a pretty exciting one. Exciting, I guess, relative terms, right? We had a customer who's got a lot of on-premise legacy footprint, and they're using data loss prevention solutions on-prem, and they're migrating to the cloud, and they're trying to figure out what's next. Like, what does DLP look like in the cloud in the context of a distributed workforce?
Yeah.
So it's been interesting learnings. We've had a lot of very competent, capable controls in an on-premise footprint, as you can imagine. A lot of, for example, in the legacy world, we would do, if we tried to do network DLP, we'd have network traffic going through a perimeter. We'd RCAP that off to a network appliance that was looking for traffic patterns. But of course, in a world of a lot of encrypted traffic, those types of controls and ways of doing things become obsolete, and you actually start missing a lot. I mean, there's lots of reasons why they need to evolve the technology stack, but just going through the journey of taking those existing controls, the existing interception points, and then what does that look like in a modern distributed architecture? So yeah, it's been interesting. We've had the ability to take existing controls. We've got some quite cool migration tools that help customers take existing policies and migrate them to the new.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was all just, click next, and it spits out the perfect policy at the end. There's, of course, some human massaging that needs to take place, but it's been actually surprisingly simple. I'll use an air quotes, if everyone can see the air quotes, to get that from the legacy policy set into the existing one. So that's been exciting learning, yeah.
Did that involve any work with our scanner capability? I mean, one of the challenges of moving from on-premises up into the cloud is actually getting a really good sense of what you've actually got there on-prem before you move it. And some of the customers I speak to will talk in terms of more of a clearinghouse approach, where they want to do a discovery pass first to work out what's actually there, and then selectively move things to the cloud. Others will kind of leave it and just move everything and then discover once it lands there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an approach I've seen with other customers. And of course, as we know, we have the ability to scan, which is great. And to your point, right, depending on how you approach that, I've seen customers, you can flip a coin as to which ones do, the cleaning first and then move, or versus just take it up and then let the smarts of the engine and the cloud essentially help you through that process. Yeah. So I have seen both approaches. In this particular case, though, to be honest, it was really about understanding if the new modern tech stack could, cover off the use cases that were important to them. Existing ones. And some of it is a one-to-one match, and that's an easy one to compare to. But others are a difference in approach. Like, for example, the web filtering I was talking about before, where a proxy would RCAP it off to a network control. That's all great and well when the the traffic's not encrypted, and B, everybody's in the corporate office.
Yeah.
So, of course, we now have the ability to, at the endpoint level, to do, web-based, filtering and DLP, etc. So we've moved a control point from a centralized proxy-based control point to a distributed control point at the endpoint. So
and who's in the office anymore?
Exactly right.
It was much easier when you had one egress point where you can direct all the traffic to that one egress point, policies and protections on it, and then send it all out from there.
Yeah.
But no one operates like that.
Yeah, 100%. So that was the one part of the project, which is pretty exciting. And the other one, which I don't get to use a lot, but it was through the exact data match. They had some,
Now, we spoke about this yesterday,
yes.
and it's the reason you're here, because it's one of these things that, and we're talking about exact data matching within the Microsoft Information Protection stack, and it's something we speak to a lot, but not that it's niche, but it's one of those things that you have to really build almost bespoke every time you have a customer who has that requirement. Correct. So unless the customer is asking for that specific requirement, I don't get to play with it that often. And you were telling me that you had to and did, and it's an amazing amount of learning and depth. And I'm looking forward to actually seeing a bit more detail after this. When he goes home and gets a chance to prep up, we're going to follow up on this conversation.
But it's probably worth as well highlighting that exact data match fits in when we're classifying data. So it's sensitive information types, trainable classifiers, and exact data match. So that's what we're talking about.
So let's clarify what we mean by exact data matching first, just for those.
Yeah, so it almost has a name. If you start out slowly and think it through, it almost to some extent self-explanatory, but it's the exact match to your data.
Okay.
Now, in our case, if you really want to get the weeds, we can support up to 100 million rows and 32 columns, and there's a lot of records you can put there. In my particular customer's case, they've got 4 million records that they need to protect. So that's way within bounds of 100 million. So we're well covered there. And essentially what it means, because it's your data and it's protected data, it's sensitive data, it's not just something you're going to upload in its raw format to the cloud to say, hey, whenever you see this, please do something about it.
Yeah.
So the process is that you take in your data, one of the learnings, this is the part that makes it, I guess, interesting when you go into it for the first time, is understanding the format. And there are some rules as to, for example, headers can't have spaces, etc. And then you need to hash it. So we supply the tooling to allow you to hash. To be honest, if I'm brutally honest, I think our Dockers could be a little bit clear on how to do that. So one of my learnings is just to understand the order and the approach.
Okay.
So, I don't know if anyone else cares for this, but to make it simpler for myself, and I was helping my customer through one example, but the customer needed to do 5 more of these. So
it sounds like the makings of a good blog post.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, actually, I scripted it, yes, and it wasn't a rocket science script. Okay. Really, it was just taking the time to understand what the script needed, and put the guardrails in place as to when you approached it, that you had line of sight to the executable. For example, you have to be in the same folder to make sure that you've got the pieces that will allow that hash to take place.
Right. So just to back up a little bit, for those of you who haven't played with exact data matching, you might be a little bit lost. And we'll put a link maybe in the
I'll drop in the
comments, because it's the difference, and without oversimplifying it, it's the difference between saying I'm going to build a regular expression or something to find something that looks like a credit card versus here are a bunch of credit card numbers and I'm looking for these specific numbers, or in your case, here's some very specific sensitive information. We're not looking for stuff that looks like this. We're looking for an exact data match.
Correct. And that kind of makes sense when you think it through. I mean, when you actually analyze it, so we're talking about on-premise before, and the difference between an on-premise approach and a cloud-based approach. So we're obviously in the cloud. So we're uploading the hash. So there's the mechanics of actually the hashing.
Yeah, so we're not uploading the actual data into our cloud.
Correct. So you absolutely, you need to hash it, and we do it with a salt, and we can either supply salt, or it comes as part of when you run the tooling. Yeah. And that's essentially what I was helping script out. But once you've done that, and you can actually, you can break this into steps. You could do it in one. But when you break into steps, you can actually literally see the hash, right? So once it's output that, you've got a hash file, and you open it up, and it's just lots of strings of hash data, but you can see it, it's there, to be seen. So you can visualize what's been uploaded to the cloud. But the point I wanted to make, though, is that when you're going about doing what you're doing and you're trying to control data loss, and we'll take the example of copying data to a USB key.
Yeah.
You can imagine if I'm copying a bunch of member data, in this case, in the healthcare environment, to a USB key, I need to now know, is it just a name or is it actually a member name, like a name and address, etc. So something has to trigger the lookup in the first place, because you remember the hash is a trigger.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a trigger and an intelligent trigger, and then you have a lookup to make sure, okay, great, something's triggered like a tripwire.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to look up to see, is that name, let's say my name, Gary Boniface, is it just Gary Boniface's name being copied to USB, or is it a member data's name?
So the trigger is we've detected a name. Now go look up and find out if that name's one of our.
Yes,
correct.
correct.
The hash.
Is that a
We've
member?
detected a credit card number. Now look up a table. Is it one of these ones? It's a phone number. Is it one of our members?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And therein lies the next level of I guess logic you have to apply to the process, because imagine a world where your member data number is an 8-digit string.
Yeah.
Now, if I was going to do a lookup on every 8-digit number that I ever copied to anywhere, you'd just be doing lookups crazy, right? It's just, you'd be exceeding actually the amount of lookups that you want to be doing.
Yeah.
So part of exact data match, part of the smarts is saying what is going to trigger a lookup, what is worthy of a lookup. So yeah, another good learning from this particular exercise was a lot of in this case, for example, it's a member number, and the member number is actually based on a mathematical formula, a checksum, right? So the modulus calculation to say that a string, imagine a string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That string is of course an 8-digit number. But that would, a lot of noise would be created if you're going to look up every time you just saw a random 8-digit string.
Number.
Yeah, correct. So, when we're building out this exact data match, identifying the lookup, the primary element as we call it, but then also being smart about what primary element is going to constitute a lookup.
Yeah.
And in this case, this fact that we have this modulus calculation ability within the data set, we can put the modulus calc in, which means that when I see a number that very specifically matches just like a lunch check on a credit card, then great, we know we've got we're in the ballpark of what a member number looks like. Okay, great. Let's go do a lookup and see, is it actually the member number plus the name and address, etc., that would go with typical member data.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it all came together in the end.
Yeah, it's coming together well. To be honest, it's still in flight with the testing, but all the testing and all the use cases that have been put forward have tick, and we're going through the process as any POC would takes its course, right?
Yeah.
You don't solve that in a day, but yeah.
I know we're in the weeds a bit, but hopefully you can sense how much we're enjoying this nerding out, because we don't often get this deep with customers and have that chance to really explore our solutions and sort of come up to the point where we've got something amazing. And we do look forward to that blog post. I'm going to hold you to that. Absolutely. And we'll drop a link in there. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Waiting patiently to my left. And by the way, I'm a little bit weird about working a camera like this, but hopefully it's not too distracting. Well played. Well, maybe you can handle this one then in that case. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I'll speak to you. Otherwise, we're going to lose your face.
Yeah.
There we go.
And I've turned my head that
Good point. Yeah. Okay. So we are amateurs at this. Bear with us.
You can tell we're doing it live. So
I know. Just reach out and touch. He's here. Yeah. Dave, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So, do you want to get into the story or about myself?
Well, a bit about yourself first, and then.
Sure. So I've worked through quite a lot of things, been in security space for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, you're both in the same team, am I right?
Both in the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of,
I manage different sections to Gary. So I have retail, real estate, and mining, utilities, electricity.
Okay. And Sydney based as well.
Sydney based as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So in the security journey, I've done both sides now of being a customer of Microsoft, as well as an employee of Microsoft. I've worked against Microsoft and other vendors.
Yeah.
So I've seen quite a lot worldwide, and a lot of those roles have been not just predominantly one area, but global.
Yeah. Yeah.
So dealing with customers across Europe, across Asia, Australia, obviously, and Americas.
Quick side note, how long have you been with Microsoft?
2.5 years.
2.5 years?
2 and a bit.
2 and a bit?
2.5.
11 years.
He's been here longer than all three of us combined.
It's a great place to be, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah. So in a couple of those roles, and I'm going to go through the story we've been talking about the last couple of days. of me being the customer and going through a similar journey of what Gary's mentioning.
Okay.
But before technology was a serious advantage to capturing
this is fascinating.
the evidence that you'd need to do that. And I say evidence because the workplace was is a prominent police force in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention which one. And a story that we went through where we found one of our employees encrypting the police database and emailing it back to his home country.
So let's set this up. This is an insider threat,
Insider risk.
insider risk story. If we were having this customer conversation today, we'd be responding with insider risk management, one of the Purview solutions, maybe communications compliance, another fantastic solution.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of capability, but this all predates all of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's fantastic about understanding where we are today as both an organization and what we have available in tool sets, the artificial layer is still something that's in development. Obviously, it's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
but the prominence of it becoming a usable tool set in helping behavioral analytics and understanding usage of machines and systems and data is really helping encapsulate what you can watch in an organization.
Yeah.
So in the case of where I was, we didn't have any of those. We had to rely a lot on personal behavioral analytics, which means like I knew I worked alongside the person in the story.
Refer to me as that person if it helps you tell the story.
No, it's
Once you go,
yeah.
what am I doing?
So when it's one thing to know about the system and watch what they do.
Yeah.
Now this, when you talk to someone, sometimes you get a feeling about someone being not necessarily strange, but there's something that's not quite right.
Something it's not anything.
Yeah.
Like how I felt about Bo.
Doesn't fall away.
It's coming good.
So, and just odd things that he would do that are not necessarily enough to say, we know he's doing something wrong, but enough that your internal is saying something isn't quite right in this particular circumstance.
Yeah.
And I'll just say one of the examples was in a small cubicle and just doing air kicks at nobody. And it's not enough to vilify someone, but it's enough to say, that's an unusual behavior in a room full of 200 people.
Yeah. Wow.
So my sergeants and senior sergeants that I worked alongside, because I was part of the information risk section of the police force, they came to me one day and said, do you know this person? And I said, yes, I do. And he went, okay, because we've just caught him emailing the database externally and encrypting the information.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And he said, so can you do us a favor and watch him?
Yeah.
Because I've worked between the different buildings.
Yeah.
And so this was actually inside the headquarters as well. So this is one of the more scary parts about it, is someone living in and working in the building.
Literally an insider.
Literally an insider,
Yeah.
taking the data and then sending it out.
Yeah.
Now, as we all know, it's the same thing that exists with data centers. If they weigh you on the way in, weigh you on the way out.
Yeah, so you can't take anything out with it.
Yeah, but a USB key filled with data doesn't weigh anything. So it's that same sort of privilege. So inside the organization, they said, yeah, watch this one and see what happens. So as it transpired, the amount of information increased, but the way we used Microsoft journaling at the time.
Well, okay. That dates it.
So we did have to use some of the technologies that were available. So as far as the information was concerned from this person, it was going out, but the information was actually being trapped inside Microsoft Journal and never actually leaving the office world.
Yeah.
So it was
nice collection of forensic evidence.
right, exactly.
Keep filling that bucket. Yeah,
Exactly. And there is exciting times in those workplaces when you turn up to work, and like being part of the investigation is kind of amusing, especially a non-uniformed police officer or internal staff officer, me being that. I was never told when certain aspects of the investigation were going to take place.
Okay.
So one morning I turned up to the office, go to the gym and what I normally do very early.
Yeah.
And at the door, there's several uniformed police officers with dogs and all of the right gear and questioning me, what are you doing here? I'm like, just starting my day, going to the gym.
Going to the gym.
And they're like, all right, great. Well, just be scarce for the next couple of hours.
Yeah.
Because This is another side about behavioral analytics. People follow the same patterns, what time they arrive to work, which direction they take from their home, all of those. So profiling becomes a massive part of it as well. And so, of course, he sensationally got arrested. I've given away the title, but this person got sensationally arrested at their desk and faced court and did go to jail for a number of years. And past that, as far as I know, they've actually been deported back to where they came from. And I don't know what
So potentially there's a nation state aspect.
Potentially, so it's a very interesting thing to be part of when, if I looked back to what we have on offer now as a product, AI wouldn't have detected the human characteristics, but the system would have been able to detect the repeated attempt at getting into the data or accessing the systems, like where you have a certain number of records that you can access and you start testing the bounds of that, seeing how much more you can get, the system go, well, that's unusual. And if I was doing it, go, well, David's doing something unusual today. Maybe we turn on insider risk management. Maybe it's something, maybe it's nothing. But using, and this is why I like how we called it co-pilot, and what AI is we're not taking the jobs of people. It's there to help you and co-pilot with you to make the analytics and collection of information easier for you as an administrator to take back and do something with it.
It takes away the busy work.
Exactly.
Trying to connect all the dots.
Exactly.
And the other nice thing about insider risk management, when you get that alert, it's kind of a bit of a trigger, because we then go backwards, right, over those audit logs. Okay, we're noticing what's he been doing for the last 90 days? That now has context. Right? Those print jobs, the context is we're seeing something dodgy.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's the good thing about, if they're doing that boundary, like they're testing what they can access and they're not normally accessing some of that content. That's where we can start those trigger points and start capturing that telemetry.
And what was the defining piece that caught the actual whole act in place was the encryption on the email. Because email going out through the mail gateway when it was not encrypted wasn't really checked. I mean, they're all logged and audited, but it's not going to raise any flags to say, what is this? But when the encrypted data was attached to the email, obviously the mail sweeper made the alerts to the right administrators and said, you might want to have a look at this.
Why are we sending out encrypted content?
Exactly.
Can't read.
Exactly. So that was an interesting trigger that not necessarily one product may not have caught it. But they're the sorts of tracks that you need to put in place in an organization when building solutions to facilitate, are people taking my sensitive data or specific IP to an organization or somewhere else for who knows what game. And the way I position I tell a similar story to the customers around this is, if people are brazen to take it from a police force, they're brazen to take it from anywhere. And the motivation for a lot of people isn't always trying to do something wrong. They might have borrowed money from a bikie gang or made a silly investment somewhere that they're now being pressured to get money or get leverage, and using that data to obtain that leverage.
Sometimes people do bad things for good reasons.
Exactly.
Sometimes
the family we need money.
Sometimes people do that by accident too.
Exactly.
The amount of customers we've had where people have just accidentally sent out data and they're not even doing it maliciously happens all the time.
And one customer, I went through this, they have insider risk. And this is at Microsoft while I've been here. He said that their number one technique they found for capturing insider risk threats was people emailing the data to themselves first. Which is always interesting to hear. We're like, oh, we've been through that. And they took the data into their own email box, and then they thought it was smart for them to send it out from there.
I thought that'd be safe.
It's such an interesting solution, because we often talk with customers and we'll sort of hear from them later on about, oh, look, I've switched on labeling and it's still happening, whatever. But insider risk management is that one solution set that without fail, I'll run into somebody, and I actually ran into someone this week. You just reminded me. And it's always the same kind of thing. It's like they're almost having a guilty pleasure moment. It's like, we switched it on and you have no idea what we've found. We've walked 4 people, right? And it's just literally default policy, switch this on. It was all being captured, but we're never doing the correlation, because there's just so much raw data these days, of course. And the more you ramp up anything else like DLP, you're generating more alerts. And so you're getting alert fatigue. But inside of risk management, they're just getting that insight into exactly what's going on. It's doing really well.
One of the easiest systems to turn on.
It really is.
Suite as well.
Clicks.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
0 agents.
Immediate payback on the investment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank our guests and in their defense and with my gratitude, they've had zero sort of notice and warning that this was going to happen. We were literally on the Microsoft booth down there at the AISA conference, and I heard both these stories and sort of went in between, and Bo was there, and between us we sort of went, what we were going to do at tomorrow, we're not doing that. We're doing this.
Yeah.
And especially since you're all here as well. Bo, you want to close this out? Anything else you got?
Yeah, so I guess this is more of a short form thing for this week. We're going to come back probably in the next 2 weeks with DLP demonstrations like we spoke about before.
Demopalooza.
Yeah, Demopalooza. So it'll be how DLP works, how it goes out to endpoint DLP, what that looks like. So we'll walk you through all of that as well. If you have seen us this week at AISA, hopefully you came and said hello. This will be in the future, so you can't go back, but hopefully you can. Hopefully you watch some sessions. We will be back in the next couple of weeks, and I'd like to thank both of you for coming on. It's been really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.